Hello and welcome to the webinar on selecting the right process for RPA. This webinar is part of a webinar series organized by Royal Cyber for the intelligent automation practices and solutions. I am Asif Hussain. I have over 15 years of experience in the field of software development and automations. Let's see first that who we are as Royal Cyber. So we are working in multiple verticals and multiple industries. We have a couple of awards also, so we can be a one-stop shop for multiple technologies for you. This is how today's agenda looks like. We'll talk about intelligent automation and its journey in enterprises, understanding impact of vision of organization on the selection of processes. We'll talk about understanding process assessment and factors on which complexity of automation and business benefits depend. We'll see how both these can be compared. In the end, we'll see an online tool that is very helpful in doing process assessment for you free of cost. And questions will be taken in the end also. Let's take a very brief look at what is RPA and intelligent automation journey. So why this automation is called robotic? We use a metaphor of a software robot with each robotic instance having its own virtual workstation. Much like a human worker, the robot uses keyboard and mouse controls to take actions and execute automations. Normally, all of these actions take place in a virtual environment and not on a screen. The robot does not need a physical screen to operate. Rather, it interprets the screen display electronically. The scalability of modern solutions based on architectures such as these owes much to the advent of virtualization technology, without which the scalability of large deployments would be limited by available capacity to manage physical hardware and by the associated cost. The implementation of RPA in business enterprises has shown dramatic cost savings when compared to traditional non-RPA solutions. There are many automation technologies available in the market, but RPA is unique and very powerful. Like most automation tools, RPA can also integrate with databases, operating systems, APIs. Additionally, it can also talk with user interfaces, just like a human user does. Now let's see what are the major benefits RPA-based automations can offer. So it can reduce burden on IT as we are not changing any underlying technologies. Bots can work 24/7 effectively. Can reduce the size of manual workforce and hence reduce the cost. No programming knowledge or coding experience required generally. Like, even a business user can learn to some extent. Less prone to error and functions with accuracy and uniformity can be performed. Execution time is much faster than manual process time. It follows rules to provide audit-free trail and is good for compliance. Repetitive tasks are performed in the same manner each time, so it's always consistent. RPA is not AI. It is good to understand that. It's robotic, but it's not AI by default. RPA is automation of steps performed by hand of a human user and augmenting it with a automated code. So we can complement RPA with AI, but it's not itself AI. AI brings head work, that means learning and decision-making capabilities. When AI is integrated with RPA, it allows the automation process to begin much faster, creating an automation continuum. A completely autonomous process would elicit a more cognitive response, transmitting it directly to the RPA system that would then complete the task. So let's see how the enterprise automation journey would look like. Automation will reach its full potential at the end of a consistent process. We like to think of it as a journey, one in which a virtual workforce is deployed by organization to help achieve its long-range corporate goals. Usually it begins with simple process-driven, highly repetitive manual process that do not need decision making at any stage and move forward towards data-driven processes that need one or more decisions during the process execution. The cost and complexity also increases when the automations move from doing to thinking and learning. Enterprises today are moving towards hyper-automation. As defined by Gartner, hyper-automation deals with the application of advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence and machine learning, to increasingly automate processes and augment humans. In simple terms, hyper-automation refers to the mixture of automation technologies that exist to augment and expand human capabilities. Coming up towards the main topic, that is to select and prioritize the process. To select and prioritize processes of automation, understanding the vision of your organization as well as the objectives you want to achieve are really important to understand first. Different groups within an organization have different goals and RPA, and they can have different vision of RPA implementation. Some use the technology for scaling purposes. Others use it for regulatory compliance or improvement in regulatory compliance and reporting. Some businesses use it to achieve a baseline performance. A few businesses want to initiate it for increasing process efficiency, and some want to have it for enriching customer experience. And for some, it is the main goal is to cut the cost. Hence, it is a prerequisite to pen down the vision or main business goals for the RPA implementation and undertake to coach and mentor the prime stakeholders in the exercise. These stakeholders further serve as the RPA evangelists in the enterprise. So there can be different objectives for you for RPA based automation within your organization. Let's see this poll first to understand what is the primary objective for you within your organization to have RPA based automation implemented. Now let's see what is important while selecting a process for automation. So we are looking for processes that are easier to implement. We should be like prioritize the processes that are easier to implement and will give more return on investment. Like we'll try to judge them for their lesser complexity and more return, because that's an easy win that can help us in running a successful program. So we are looking for processes that are rule-based, Processes that are rule-driven and consistent are always a good candidate. Manual and repetitive tasks are the right processes for such an automation, because we want to have small and simple automation that is highly repetitive in volume so that we can get a big benefit out of it. Data intensive processes that involve systematic churning of huge data. Processes with electronic triggers that commence or receive electronic data files or some sort of electronic input that will trigger the process. Labor intensive processes that involve manual calculations of results with complex calculations, which may one error in one calculation can lead to other errors in the process. So such processes need accuracy and can be a good candidate. Processes that can have that are labor intensive, that involve a huge team and need a big number of resources, and processes that are that require audit proofs and regulatory compliances, validations, and background step checks, in fact. Apart from this, processes that currently have high error rate or processes that are required to be performed out of office hours are also a good candidate for RPA-based automations. Measuring these help to clearly chart the agenda of an RPA program. Working within a framework of rule-driven processes helps to achieve the maximum mileage and ROI from RPA. So now let's see what should be our approach in selecting the process. So first we have to devise a strategy to prioritize processes. We'll talk in detail about these things. Let's see what the superficial agenda should be. So first we'll have a strategy created, and then we'll try to understand and lay out complexity factors. We'll try to calculate complexity levels and calculate automation potential, map business benefits, map the process into quadrants. We'll see what quadrants I'm talking about, and prioritize process based on your organization or your business unit's goal and ease of automation. As I said, we'll have more details about these later in this session. So let's see this a quadrant system here. We have inefficiency here, we have efficiency here. So we are talking about processes that we are automating, and we have manual processes. We want to achieve automated processes. So let's see if process is very efficient somewhere here and very manual somewhere here. That means we can live with it, because although it is manual, but it is efficient. But if a process is very efficient and also automated, like if we achieve the automation of this process, this is best of both worlds. So that's the ideal condition. We have to have an efficient process that we automate. If a process is manual and inefficient, that's loss. We should not have a manual inefficient process. If a process is inefficient and automated, that's a total loss, because we have even lost the cost that we incurred on the automation of this process. We should not automate an inefficient process. We should make it efficient first. We should try to make it efficient. We should try to make it lean and then automate it. So that these factors can also be important to consider while prioritizing a process for RPA based automation. I mean, there are three major things to look for while assessing a process. One is complexity of the process. It is defined as maybe like generally what we do is we define it as like low, medium, or high. A process that is like 30% complex, we would say it's low complex. A process that is like 30 to 60% complex, we'll say it is medium. And a process that is more than 60% complex, we'll probably say it is with high complexity. So drive based input methods, application types, all these things matter, like input methods, application types, free text, in like if it is an email that needs to get some input from, that's free text, so it's difficult to read inputs from an email to make up context from there. So all these factors, the environment in which the process applications are, um, number of applications involved within a process, all this matters and increase the complexity of a process. So percentage of rule-based steps, if they are more rule-based, it's simpler. If input methods are electronic, that's simpler. So we'll see that how we can measure the complexity. Second comes the FTE savings we can achieve through automation. So calculate the full-time equivalent savings that can be achieved by automation of a process to gauge the advantage of ROI for a process automation. So this is also an important factor. Automation quadrant. So this process lies in which quadrant, it is also important. So derived as a matrix based on process complexity and potential benefit, high, medium, low, classification can let us know if it's a quick win or low hanging fruit or it's a must do improvement or what. So all these three things are really important in judging a process, whether to go for it earlier on in your automation journey. Now let's see what are the in detail, like what are the complexity factors that we have to look for. Number one is number of screens involved in a process. So we try to count how many screens, and within a screen, of course, if it's too complex a screen, we should also take this into consideration. Then we see what type of applications we need to interact for the automation, like it's a Java application, it's a mainframe application, it's a web-based a .NET application or SAP application. Like we have to see whether maybe we want to interact with MS Office based applications. So all these applications can be of different complexity, and at least we should count how many applications we need to interact with and we already have counted how many screens we have to interact with. So we can use these numbers in calculating the complexity. Then comes that how many variations within a scenario exist. Like there can be a simple flow that involves 3 screens maybe, but in a certain scenario, these screens increase within a process and there are multiple steps that are added. So take into consideration all these scenarios, all these if-else conditions and rules. See that if these inputs are structured, like the inputs are machine readable and digital inputs, whether there is a scanned PDF image involved, a free text like email input is involved. So take this into consideration and consider unstructured inputs as difficult to implement. So see what are the standard inputs, and if the templated inputs are there, same format or type of inputs across the different cases are there, then it can be an easier case. If the inputs are free text, it can be a difficult case. If the input is image based, it can be a difficult case, like it can be a scanned document, or it can be a VDI screen, Citrix screen, because our bot cannot recognize these components on a VDI screen as easily as it can on a native screen. So for a VDI screen or Citrix screen is acts like an image for a bot. There are artificial intelligence features available within RPA tools, but even then it adds a complexity. So how we like in the end, what we come up with as a result of complexity analysis is that we categorize a process with either it is high, medium, or low complexity. A process with high complexity um, is one that requires programming skills in terms of string manipulation functions, working with arrays, data tables, collections, data formatting, exception handling, complex SAP applications, or complex applications running in a Citrix environment or terminal emulators. So it can be something that we can say may require more development time, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks. A process with medium complexity could be one that requires the transfer of data between applications, or one that involves SAP or applications running in a Citrix environment. It takes like around 3 to 4 weeks of development. A low complexity automation project is in general one that can be easily created with the recorder, and recorder is a feature in RPA tools, and it requires small customizations thereafter. This includes desktop applications as well as web applications. It can include scraping web screens and screen scraping, and it generally takes like 1 to 2 weeks of development. Now let's see the factors driving automation potential. First is the process has to be rule-based. So agent or user doesn't use his her experience. Like whoever is doing this manually does not need to use his experience to take any judgment or make decisions while processing a case, but it is a rule-based thing that can be represented in the form of flowchart maybe. So if a process is manual and repetitive, a process which is performed by user, and most of the process steps are same for all the cases and transactions, it's good to have thing. If it is semi-manual or repetitive, that a process like which is performed by user and involves any automation mechanism like macro or Outlook plugin, etc. So that is kind of semi-manual. An automated process is like a process that is already automated, so we don't need to do much. Or a process that is manual but not repetitive, a process which is performed by user, and process steps of each case will be not the same. So that's a difficult case. It reduces the automation potential for this process. If a process has standard inputs, so inputs and are standard if content is positioned in the same place, even if the input type is PDF or Word, that's easier to read. If it's not standard, the document we need to read changes its format. It's difficult to read. Though there are tools available uh, within RPA like IQBot of Automation Anywhere that can help in this situation, and AI Fabric from the UiPath, but that adds complexity. So there can be processes and applications used to process a case that are going to be changed in like 3 to 6 months. So it's not a good idea to go for automation for such a process. Or if there are there are a large number of percentage of total volume received that cannot be processed by this automation, then it's not a good idea to go for. Like if it's the automation will still leave a lot of cases to be performed manually because of exceptions, it's not a good idea to go for this kind of an automation. Now let's see how we measure the benefits out of an automation. So first is cost saving. So we try to compare the FTE reduced from a manual run with an automated run. If it's high, it's a good process, it's a good benefit. If the productivity gain that the increased volume processed in the defined unit time in parallel with the decrease of the turnaround time um, is improved, then it's a good productivity gain. Enabling business to act at a faster pace may be a good priority for you to go for a process, so it's a good business benefit. Robots can run as configured with zero error rate, so if it is something that you want to achieve, it could be a good business benefit. Automation leading to customer satisfaction, that's maybe every organization wants, and if this automation will help you get it, you can go for it. Expected spike in volume in near future. It's something that like in the season of Black Friday, if you want to have more work done, you can easily add more bots on cloud and have this done flexibly and scale up and scale down your operations. Or if the process needs compliance, ability to comply with regulatory requirements, I think going for it is a good option. So this is a very interesting thing that we can get through all these process steps or the factors that we were talking about. So there can be processes that are highly complex and they have low benefits. So we can place them in this quadrant. The processes that are high in complexity and high in benefit, we should put them here. And you can see here that we can put processes that are low in complexity and low in benefits are to be placed here, and processes high in benefit and low in complexity should be placed here. So by putting these processes in these four quadrants, we can mark the processes as low complexity, high benefit, or whatever they are, and determine whether it's a quick win, whether it's a low-hanging fruit, or what we can declare it as. So probably a quick win is something that we'll go for first, because that's something giving high benefit and low complexity of implementation. And then maybe we'll go towards a process that is low in complexity and low in benefit. But that depends totally on what sort of priority you have. But quick wins is of course something that we should go for first. So coming up with this kind of table is always very helpful. And within the quick wins, we can further have this kind of an interpretation, like we have three processes, and against all these factors we can gauge them, that maybe it's 25% highly manual and repetitive, this process is 50%, this process is 50%. So we can mark it like this in percentage or by this representation and determine which process to go for first. Now let's see, when we are developing our first few processes, automating our first few processes, we should try to create champions. Champions are who have benefited from a process automation, who has seen the impact of automation, and he can talk about it. So champions from pilot projects can now spread the word and create a breeding ground for more support for RPA initiative. So making champions in different departments and geo regions is very good for your RPA program. When we have success stories floating around, people are listening about it, we'll have less traction, and it will be handy for you to run a more smooth program. So this brings me to another interesting aspect and a very important aspect, that is creating center of excellence within your organization. And the very important part of it is creating an organization-wide role matrix. So selecting a project sponsor and setting up a governance team immensely helps in fine-tuning the organizational processes and going further in selecting the processes that are just right for automation. Also, defining a proper responsibility and accountability matrix helps uh, a seamless RP adoption. It's important to give your overseeing body the authority to enforce your policies and standards, and the same principle holds true for RPA. If your program is to succeed, your center of excellence will need to enable your line of businesses by aligning with their requirements to create real change. It will even let you face internal resistance. Building a center of excellence is the first step in planning for the long-term success of your RPA program. You'll also want to establish a repeatable methodology for implementing RPA, as well as a change management program to foster buy-in across your organization. As we talked earlier, we put our RPA solution in place to support specific business goals such as decreasing cost, improving efficiency, or elevating quality. Now, you have the opportunity to use what you learned from the experience to help individual lines of business achieve their specific goals. To ensure correct implementation and management of RPA platform across the organization, your center of excellence will create an end-to-end methodology that will be easy for teams to follow. This manual uh, that they will create will include guidelines for choosing the right processes for automation, optimizing data and processes to prepare for automation, measuring the success, and aligning with all applicable data privacy laws and compliances. Now let's see a tool, an online RPA assessment tool available by Royal Cyber that will help you assess your processes for feasibility and success and ROI. So here's what we Royal Cyber offer as a jumpstart package to let our customers start small and see the power and ROI of RPA-based automations in just a few weeks. This kind of jumpstart often helps convincing higher management to go for a full-blown automation program. What we do is we pick a single process for automation with the help of our customer and develop an RPA automation for it. These are the three phases of such a jump start. This can show the potential of RPA and Royal Cyber, uh, as well as help customers see internally what they may need to have for an organization-wide center of excellence to drive an RPA program within their organization. Today, for the participants of this webinar, we are offering a 30% discount in the form of 2 weeks of complimentary services out of 6 weeks of the total Jumpstart package. You can contact marketing here in the questions section or email us at this email address, info@royalcyber.com, for further information about the program. So this is the end of our webinar. Thank you very much for attending. Stay connected for getting information about our next upcoming sessions. Goodbye.